a table, let's say with customer name, city, and a region, and there are 10 million rows in total, right? And there are only three regions there. Let me show it to you. Let's say you had a table. That table has columns called customer name, customer city, and region. All right. Now let's say there are a total of 10 million rows here in my data, right? And the regions are spread. So for example, there are total 10 millions. I can write it as 10M, right? So in Europe, there are, let's say, 2 million people. In Asia, I have again, not two, let's say it's 5 million. And then in the American region, I have again 3 million people. Like that, let's say. If you partition it by region, right? If I am partitioning it based on the region, I will get three partitions. One will be Europe, right? With why to write it with 2 million rows. I'll get another partition called Asia with 5 million rows, and I'll get another partition called America with 3 million rows, right? Understood? Partitions? Yes or no?
Yes.
All right. Now, so partitioning of data is important, right? I told you when you want to do it at source, it's more about the performance. When you're doing it at the sink, it's more about how you want to structure your data in the destination. So that is one thing. The other thing over here is, if I show you, right? So that is there in the inspect section of my source, I can see, the columns and the order of the columns, right? I'll show you how you can change the order of the columns also. I'll show you how you can change the name of the column also. And to go to the data preview, you have to turn on this data flow debug. What is data flow debug? Have you heard about it? I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have, because data flow is something that you're hearing about for the first time. So what is data flow debugging?
Data flow debugging, I don't.
Debugging is the same everywhere, right?
Okay,
So
in
that
Java
means
or
that
anything. Yeah,
everywhere.
just
Debugging is
uh,
nothing but,
debug.
an active mode that basically checks for errors and everything, right?
Yes.
It's continuously. So data flow debugging also allows the users to observe and troubleshoot data as
Yeah,
the data
troubleshoot step by step.
progresses. Yes, as the data progresses through various transformations within the data flow. All right. Particularly in Azure Data Factory, right? It is present in Synapse also. So this feature will provide you an interactive way to understand how the data is being processed and identify any issues or unexpected behavior. What happens is, if I define any transformation here, right? Let's say I did a join. Now I'll have a left stream also and right stream also. Now that join cannot be performed until I put this activity into the table and run it. Yes or no? Yes. If I'm defining a transformation,
Yeah.
I can only tell whether the transformation works or not when the pipeline has been executed successfully. Correct?
Yes.
But what if I want to know whatever I have defined is correct without actually going and running the pipeline? Do you think we have something for that? Obviously, that is data flow debug. It is a mode
Yes.
that will help you run your transformation here itself without actually running the pipeline, right? Now I cannot, this is not a pipeline that I'm creating. This is a data flow. Data flow will have to be added as an activity in the pipeline. Do you remember? If I go to author section, let me open this over here. I go to pipelines, I select a pipeline. I'll have to add data flow as an activity. And when I add it as an activity, I have to select from the drop down. So I have a data flow one over here, right? So I have to select that this is the data flow that I want to run. And then the pipeline will trigger. So what you create here is not the pipeline. It's just an activity that you're defining. Understood? So data flow debug, this mode here, which is currently turned off, is an interactive testing and development mode. All right. Within Azure Data Factory, it is present within Synapse also, and it allows you to build, test, and verify your data transformation logic in real time. I don't have to execute the pipeline. I don't have to trigger the pipeline to see what the output is, right? Now, it's more like you've written a Python program, for example, Ravi, right? You've written a Python program. How will you know whether your logic is correct or not until you execute it? Correct? You'll have to execute it. Yes or no? Now, a simple Python program is fine. But what if the execution involves
Yes.
moving data from one place to the other, then saving it somewhere else, then reading from somewhere else? If there's a lot of overhead in that transformation, you wouldn't want to run it every time just for the testing purpose. Correct or no? Just for testing, why do I have to trigger the pipeline? So with the data flow debug mode, it is like a live preview of my data transformation. If I define the transformation here, what is the result that I'm going to get? I can see in data preview. Okay, so it's like step by step, you will get to know that what you did in this activity, what is it resulting into? Understood? Without actually having to run the pipeline.
Yes.
So let me open data flow debug over here. So time I'll select 1 hour only. Click on OK because it's a very costly resource also. This data flow debug mode is very costly. Let me tell you, don't just keep it running all the time. All right. So data flow debug, it will take some time, right? Because it uses compute. Because eventually, if it has to show you what your transformation actually does to the data, it will have to do the compute in the backend. Yes or no? So it's like a live preview of your data transformation. When you activate debug mode, Azure will provision a very small dedicated Apache Spark cluster just for my development session. All right. And this cluster will allow me to see how the data looks at every single stage of my data flow, from the initial source to the final sync. How this data flow debug works is when you toggle the data flow debug button over here, right? In the user interface, there's a series of events which happen in the backend. First, cluster gets provisioned. You see, since it's a cluster provisioning, that is why it is taking so much of time. Compute is getting provisioned in the backend. Azure will spin up a live Spark cluster, based on the integration runtime settings that I have specified. And this process usually takes a few minutes to get complete. That is why, data flow debug is not like I switched it on, it will work directly. No, it does not work like that. It will take some time because in the backend, there is a compute cluster getting provisioned, right? And compute clusters getting provisioned is one of the longest steps within uh, in data transformation, right? Then once the cluster is ready, your debug session begins. This cluster will remain active for a specific period that I'll be defining through the time to live, right? TTL setting. And it can be 60 minutes, it can be 2 hours, it can be 4 hours also, as you saw, right? After which the cluster will automatically shut down to prevent any unnecessary cost. And with the session active, once this data flow debug session is active, right? You can click on any transformation in your data flow canvas and select the data preview tab to basically see at this point, whatever source I selected, I did one transformation. Then let's say I did another transformation. Then I did another transformation, right? And then I did another transformation, right? Whatever I'm doing, multiple transformations I did here, right? So all these transformations together, right? At this point, when I come to the final select, right? So I did join, I did a union, I did an aggregate, I did a select. So at this select query, what does my data look like? All right. So this is what you will get to know through data flow debug. That is the compute that is getting provisioned in the backend actually. All right. So you can click on any transformation and it'll, if you go to the data preview tab, right, the debug cluster will then process a sample of your data, right, up to a point, and then it'll display the result directly in the browser itself here over here, and it'll give you an immediate feedback on your logic. So whatever, it's like, defining something and then immediately checking whether it is correct or not, right? So it's like a validation happening. Debug session side by side you're doing, right? To debug each and every step. That is how you do it, right? Debugging a file, a piece of code, you go function by function, you see how the first function is being called, then how the second function is being called from within the first function, then the third function being called, right? So you will do some console dot log, right? If it's a web development, you'll do some print statement, right? To see where it is taking me and what is the data that I'm getting there, correct? That is how you debug step by step. Same thing you'll be doing here also. It's very important, right? You can instantly validate your expressions, your join conditions, your data conversions. And if you make a mistake, you'll see it right away in the data preview section that will allow you to fix it on the spot, right? When a data flow isn't behaving as expected, the debug mode is basically your best tool. You can move from one transformation to the next. You can inspect the data preview at each stage to pinpoint exactly where the logic went wrong, right? For very complex transformations, seeing the before and the after state of your data is, incredibly insightful. So it helps you to build a very strong, mental model also. So for now, for example, it's done. If I have the rows here, right, I have my source. If I go to data preview, I refresh it. Let's see. If I'll not be able to see it, I'll have to go to projection also. Let me see the projection. This is fine. Still happen. Partition the data. Let me import the projection again from the source. All right, so it's successfully imported. Short string short. Let's go to data preview, and now I can see the data. Right. So I'm able to see some 100 rows over here, right? Currently you see order ID is integer, right? Short integer. If I go to my projection and I change it to, let's say, a double, right? I can refresh the data preview. All right. So now you see order ID is in the double format, right? So I got the projection, I got it, I changed the type, and I can see the data preview also based on the type that I have changed. If I run some other transformation, let's say I create a select query, right? And I only want to select specific columns. That is, I just want to know order ID and customer ID. Which customer placed which order ID, right? This is done. If I go to data preview now and I refresh it, I'll be able to see step by step what my uh, you know data sets are here. So now you see in the select transformation, I made a choice that I want to select these two columns. So I've selected a specific column. What name do I want? Let's say order ID new. This is the name of the column that I want to give. Let's say this column should be selected, but I want an alias for its name. Now I can go to data flow preview, refresh it again, and I'll be able to see a different column name altogether, right? So order ID new, right? Within select settings, it's, there's a lot more that we are going to do. We are going to write some expressions also. We are going to build some expressions, right? That is also something we'll see. So I think for today we should stop it here, right? We've seen data flow debug and everything, and we saw how you're going to do the partition, what different types of partitions are, what is a projection, what is a data flow debug mode, how do you do the data preview in every step, right? Whatever transformation you define after every step, right? Whether you want to, let's say, filter this based on a particular value, right? That also you can define. Here I can define filter on what value. So here you can use the expression builder. Now this expression builder is very important for you to understand. There's a reference documentation to it that I want you to read, right? So before you come to the next class, please read through this once. Just once, give it a reading. All right. What is expression? What is a factorial, right? What are these expressions? And if you click on them, right, you'll get more details. For example, column names. So column names, what is the expression that you give, right? And what does it do? It gets the name of the output column for a string. You can pass an optional string name as the first argument. The second argument is also optional with false as the default. you will set the second argument to true. Data factory will return one column that are drifted via schema drift, right? So collect is there. Now there's a lot of different functions that you can use. There are date and time functions. There are expression languages, right? Expression languages basically, over here, if you see aggregate functions, you can, we'll see, right? If you want to calculate an average, that also you can do. If you want to do a count, that also you can do. It will give you an average of the column. All right. So we'll see what this is. So I can use something like average sales. There's a lot of it that can be done here. If I go to functions, I can see all the functions over here. If I go to input schema, I can see the columns that I have. I can change them. If there are any parameters to the pipeline, I can do that, right? Apart from that, there are logical operators also here. If I want to add something, if I want to subtract something, if I want to multiply, divide, or, and, not, power is equal to, right? I have everything. So I'll show this to you on Monday. We'll start building these expressions as well. All right. So you'll know how to build an expression and what does expression building here does. So we'll try and understand that as well. All right. Now,
Okay.
as every time, when you're closing your session, please make sure anything that incurs a lot of cost is deactivated or deleted. For example, this data flow debug, I'll just turn it off because I'm done with it, right? And that is what you
Okay.
also have to do every time you're working on the Azure platform. These are, small steps that basically go a long way in managing the cost of your environment, right? So you have to make sure that you're not just building solutions, you're actually building cost effective solutions. All right.
Okay.
You have to think like an architect. When I say you have to think as an architect, right? That also means that, what does the architect do? He will plan everything, right? He will have the budgets and everything. He'll have everything in the mind. If I just tell somebody to build a wall for me, they can spend lakhs on it also. They can do it in thousands also, right? So that is as an architect, it'll be my duty to make sure that it is done in the best way with most, you know, uh, efficiently, with quality as well, but with the least cost as well. So you're doing it on all the three aspects. All right. It's done, I think. I'll close this. Thank you for joining in. Have a happy weekend.